In this problem, a ball is thrown into the air, so it stays in the air for a few seconds and then comes back down. What we want to determine is the velocity and the acceleration at different points in the ball's flight. So we'll start by evaluating what is the velocity at the very peak. So I'm going to call this v is equal to what? And how we're going to go about figuring this out is we're going to actually evaluate the velocity at different points. So how is it moving throughout? So if you imagine each of these balls is just a snapshot 1 second apart from each other, at the bottom, and after 1 second, it's going to travel that much. So it has a positive upward velocity here, and it'll have an upward velocity there, and then it goes down. The ball flies up to its peak and then falls back down. And what this means is that all the time before reaching the peak, it's going upwards, and all the time after reaching the peak, it goes downwards. And actually, right at the peak, it has a velocity of 0. 1 moment before or after, it would be moving, but at the very, very peak, it doesn't move at all, just for that one picture-perfect moment. Now what we want to determine is the velocity 1 second before and 1 second after. And to do this, we're going to have to assess how velocity changes over time. And on Earth, we have a nice g, which is the acceleration due to gravity. Gravity always accelerates all objects on the surface of Earth at a rate of 9.8 meters per second squared, or 9.8 meters per second. So for every second, the velocity of an object will increase towards Earth by 9.8 meters per second. So if we're at 0 and then wait a second, which is this, then we'll be at a velocity of 9.8 meters per second. So 1 second travels, 1 second later, the velocity changes by 9.8 meters per second. 1 second before, the velocity also changes by 9.8 meters per second. So if we go back, we're looking at 9.8 meters per second. But here, the velocity is upwards. That's 9.8 meters per second up, and this is 9.8 meters per second down. And if we want to look at the intervals, the 1 second interval, every 1 second interval, the velocity will change by 9.8 meters per second. Will actually change downward by 9.8 meters per second. So you could say the velocity decreases if downward is your negative direction. Now over 2 seconds, if you imagine from here to here, what is the change between these two moments for the ball? And it may seem like it doesn't change at all because it goes from 9.8 meters per second to 9.8 meters per second. But that's not quite correct, as it goes from 9.8 meters per second up to 9.8 meters per second down. And velocity cares about direction. So what actually happens is it goes from 9.8 meters per second up, it changes by 9.8 to reach 0, and it changes by another 9.8 to reach 9.8 meters per second down. And that gives you 19.6. So after 2 seconds, the change in velocity is equal to 9.8 plus 9.8, which is equal to 19.6. So after 2 seconds, our velocity changes by 19.6 meters per second. The last thing we want to remember is that the acceleration of 9.8 meters per second is true for the entire duration of the ball's flight. So the acceleration at every point here is 9.8 meters per second squared. Acceleration here, 9.8 meters per second squared. Acceleration here, 9.8 meters per second squared. And that's true for every moment of the ball's flight. Acceleration does not change. And it always points downward as well. That's very important. It always points towards Earth. So that's all. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.